I was once in a relationship with someone who really found it difficult to find a positive thing about me. And I often heard this is wrong and that's wrong and this and that. And just the general attitude was kind of could do no right. And one day after having heard this for quite a while, I said, so exactly. I mean, I get that I'm bad. I get that I'm insufficient. And I get that I, do all these things the wrong way. But who am I being compared to? Because I really, I want to improve. I don't want to be a terrible human. I want to be a reasonably decent human who, can get along with other humans, right? And so tell me who this person is, and I can study what they do and how they do it so well, and maybe I can learn from them. I never really got the answer to that question, who that person was. It reminds me a lot of when I hear people complaining about this country. And I say, compared to what? Compared to what country? And I get the same quiet kind of response. You know why? Because most of you motherfuckers have not traveled. Some of you have never left your city, your state, your region, the country. What are you comparing this to? Most of you are comparing it to nothing because you've never been anywhere else outside of this country that wasn't some kind of, America Lite. Here's how I know what I know and why I think you're so full of shit. Only about 40% of Americans have a passport. It used to be only about 10%. And then the government decided that if you're going to be on a cruise ship, that you would need to have more than a driver's license, that you had to have a passport to even get on a cruise ship. And at the point that they required that, I think it was 10, 15 years ago, then everybody rushed to get a passport. So we went from roughly 10% to 40%. That means a 30% bump up, largely attributable to cruise traveling. And what's it like to be on a cruise ship? I've only been on one. It's pretty much America at sea. All the food that you're familiar with, the boat is a floating American culture. American entertainment, American food, American furniture, American, clothes, American gift shop, American drinks, American people. You're surrounded by Americans. It's a floating America. So I went on a vacation. I left the country. No, fuck you didn't. You were on a cruise ship. You're going to compare, oh yes, I can really compare and contrast the way the world is outside of the United States because I've been on a cruise ship.
Yeah.
If you aren't on a cruise ship, then where are the rest of the most tourists going? They're going to the Caribbean and they're going to Mexico. And they're not going to live out in the countryside of Mexico. They're going to a beach resort. Very often all inclusive. All your meals, everything's included. Drinks, meals, accommodations. You're in this hermetically sealed experience. It's America abroad. Everybody speaks English. So you have no basis for comparison. You don't know how good you have it here. I've lived in third world countries. I know how bad it can be. I know what it's like not to have running water and not to have a toilet in the house. When I lived in Central America, I visited the home. I spent the night at the home of the woman who was my caretaker, my nanny. She lived out in the countryside with her family. They lived in a wooden hut with a thatched roof that had a hole in it, no running water. And I remember lying at night on this bed that was made of a wooden frame with ropes kind of woven across the thing with a very thin straw-filled mattress. And I remember laying on that very uncomfortable bed, looking up through the hole in the roof and feeling drizzle coming down onto my face. It's actually one of my favorite beautiful memories. But that was poverty. That was an interesting sense memory for me as an older man, but that's not fun, having a hole in your roof. When I was in the Dominican Republic, I worked in the favelas there, and these people had no running water. They had tin roofs that leaked when it rained, and their floors were dirt and rock, and a leaky roof making mud in that rocky mud. And I saw these mothers with babies on their hips in this environment. You ever have anything close to that? That's poverty. That's their everyday life. And their country does not take care of their people the way our country does. You drive around the countryside in the Dominican Republic and you will see mangled bodies, arms that bend in unnatural ways, legs that, are bent at right angles. And you go, what in the hell happened? Was that a birth defect? No, that was an injury that was never mended because they didn't get to the hospital and have their bone reset. That's how bad it is. When you go and look at the pollution on these beaches, you are walking on more pollution and more trash than you are sand. Your feet make more contact with litter than they do sand. I have been to countries where you dare not raise your voice in opposition to the government, or you'd find yourself in jail or worse. Have you ever been to a place where you could not freely speak your mind? In the sub-Saharan Africa, less than 40% of the roads are paved. Less than 40% of the roads are paved. Most of the rail is in bad shape, railways. Power, there are rolling brownouts. Sometimes you can go hours without power, sometimes days on end without power. You ever had that happen to you here in the United States? Unless you didn't pay your bill. So I don't mind people complaining. I think that's part of the process, part of solving problems. It requires identifying them and then coming up with solutions. But before you can really identify the scale of the problem and the seriousness of the problem, you've got to have some basis of comparison. And your sniveling, complaining ass who has never been anywhere else but this country, you have no idea how good you have it. And honestly, I am so insulted by your ignorance. When I know, I can tell you've never been anywhere. You have nothing to compare this country to, and yet you're sitting there with your ass on your shoulders, speaking with some authority about how bad this country is. Compared to what? Answer the question. And watching YouTube videos and reading articles and talking to ChatGPT ain't going to get you there. Get your ass on a plane and get out of this country. Land somewhere that is not a cruise ship, that is not Mexico, that is not the Bahamas, that is not, the Caribbean. Put yourself in another country, in another culture, and be there for a few weeks. And then come back and tell me how you feel about this country. Until then, you ain't got shit to say about shit.